Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the virtual tour through the Philips Museum in Eindhoven. My name is Olga Kolen, and I'm the director of the Philips Museum and your host for today. We are very delighted that you all joined from all over the world to see and to be able to hear our Philips history stories. Let us know wherever in the world you are watching this, because we really would like to know. The last months, we have worked hard to turn our Philips Museum experience into a virtual one, especially for you. And today, our curator is Sergio Derks, our chief storyteller. He will take us on a journey through Philips history for 45 minutes and tell you all stories you always wanted to hear. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat so we can answer them or we can ask them Sergio later on in the tour. Sit back and relax and let's have a nice 45-minute ride. Sergio, can I present you to our very nice and lovely audience?
Thank you, Olga, for this nice introduction. Well, I'm very pleased that you join our tour. And we are now standing right in front of our Philips Museum. It's in the heart of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And well, as you can see, we rolled out a red carpet. Now, of course, I mean a Philips blue carpet for you to join this tour. And we have also decorated the museum with a great picture of 130 years of improving lives. And you see also the mention of the slogan, celebrating the past and embracing the future. So I want to give you more insights in our history and in our stories, and answer questions like where do we come from, and when and how did we start in healthcare, and how did the company develop over the years. So you see also a great picture here of a young child sitting on the shoulders of his father. And for me, that symbolizes that we are working also for the future generations, but it also symbolizes that we are standing on the shoulders of our predecessors. So it's a very meaningful picture. Now, let's have a look inside. Here we are. And let's first listen to our president, Mr. Frans van Houten.
Welcome, everyone. At Philips, we have been improving lives for 130 years and counting. But how much do you know about our heritage? During this tour, you will discover our story of innovation, collaboration, and entrepreneurship, as well as our long-standing commitment to doing business responsibly and sustainably. Are you ready to learn about how we have improved billions of lives around the world and continue to do so? I can tell you that it all started in 1891 in Eindhoven, here in our first factory, which is now the Philips Museum. Start your tour to find out more. Join us as we continue to improve lives around the world.
Thank you, Frans. Well, as Frans already said, it all started here in exactly this building in 1891. And you can see here the walls of that first factory of Philips. And Eindhoven was back in 1891 was a very small town. And you can see here a picture of the first factory. And here you can see the small town of Eindhoven in 1891. It had only 4,500 residents. And you can see here that first factory. It's lying in the midst of a few meadows. So it was a very rural area. But when Philips started, after a few years, people came from far and wide to earn a living in Eindhoven. So Eindhoven grew and grew and grew. And it grew into one of the major cities of the Netherlands, thanks to Philips. Now let's move on and continue our tour. And we walk along this timeline, and you see pictures of a few milestones of our company, but we can also show that in the museum. So we pass that. Now, when Philips started in 1891, it was it was an era of great inventions and discoveries. And you see here the invention of X-ray. And it was for the first time possible to have a look inside a body without having to cut it. So it really revolutionized medicine. There were also other major inventions, like, for example, cars that appeared in the street, but also the first phonograph, the first gramophone by Mr. Thomas Edison. And here you see one of those cars, those early cars. Also, Graham Bell invented the telephone. So there was a lot of activity in that era, so by the end of the 19th century. And one of the major inventions of that period was, of course, electric lighting. Now, before the invention of electric lighting, most people used candles or oil lamps to lighten their living rooms. And you can see this here in a picture by Vincent van Gogh. And he painted it only 8 kilometers from Eindhoven in the town of, in the village of Nuenen. And you see here peasants sitting around a table eating, and the whole room is just lit by one oil lamp. So it was very dark. It were dark ages, you could say. But electric lighting really improved people's lives. So because you were able to work longer, but also to play or to read for a longer time. So this really improved people's lives. Now, electric light, you can see it here. Well, nowadays we see it as a very basic product. But to produce electric light in around 1900s, it was quite high tech. Now here you see one of the early Philips lamps. And well, you had to have a lot of knowledge, for example, about vacuum techniques, but also about electricity, of course, about chemistry, about physics, and about production methods, because you had to produce this lamp in great quantities. Now, Philips mastered all of these disciplines and thus was able to also produce other kind of, well, you could say lamps. And it are electronic tubes. And you see here 3 examples of that. The first one on the right is an X-ray tube. Now, Philips was able to produce also X-ray tubes. Now, how did we get involved in healthcare? Well, it's a great story because, well, it's all thanks to a question of a hospital in the Netherlands. They had X-ray tubes from Germany, but during the First World War, the borders with Germany were closed. And well, we had to, if they were broken, these X-ray tubes, they had to repair them. But the borders were closed, so they couldn't be repaired in the factory in Germany. So a radiologist of the Antonie van Leeuwenhoek Hospital in Amsterdam asked Philips to repair them. And Philips said, okay, we can do that. And we can do even more. We can build new ones from scratch. So that is how Philips got involved already in 1918 in the healthcare technology business. And well, that's quite amazing. It's more than 100 years ago. Now, also in 1918, Philips produced the first radio valves of the company. This is also a kind of tube, a kind of transistor, and it really improves the quality of the transmission, and it also gives a better sound quality. So Philips embarked also on this new venture. Now, after the war, Philips also produced televisions, and the most important part of a television is, of course, the television tube, and you can see that here. Now, we can see here that from that, from that light bulb, electric light bulb, a complete electrotechnical company emerged. Now, who did start with all this? Well, there are three main persons who started our company. And well, that's in the beginning, that are these two men. It's Frederick Philips, a banker, and the father of Gerard Philips. It's Frederick Philips, the father, and his oldest son, Gerard Philips, or Gerard Philips. And he really started the company with producing light bulbs. And Gerard was a technician, a scientist, and he studied at the Technical University in Delft and went to work in Glasgow in Scotland, to work at a shipyard. And there he really saw the future and the possibilities of electric lighting. Many ships that were built there in that shipyard were steamships and already had electric lighting because it was much safer than using oil lamps or candles. And well, he thought, when I go back to the Netherlands, I will produce light bulbs as well. And he talked to it about his father, and his father said, well, that's a great idea. I will invest in you, in your new company. And together they bought this first factory back in 1891. And on the 15th of May, they started Philips. Now, well, the business in those first years didn't went as well as expected. And the father said, well, let's ask your youngest brother, Anton Philips, to join the company. Now, and Anton was a bit like a reveler, and he was a born salesman. So he was working at that time in London, a big city, of course, and he was working there as a stockbroker. And he said, well, I'm not so keen on coming to that small town of Eindhoven. So please let me stay here because I'm having a great time. But his father insisted, and so he said, well, okay, I'll join and will help my older brother, but I will only stay here for half a year, and then I go back to London. But well, as we know now, he stayed here all of his life because he really got a hang of it, and he seized all kinds of opportunities. And well, he really laid the foundations for the big international company of Philips. So he sold lamps and other products of Philips all over the world. Now, there was also a kind of a healthy rivalry between those two brothers because Anton wanted to sell more lamps than his brother could produce, whilst his brother wanted to produce more than his youngest brother could sell. So the company went from strength to strength. They really inspired each other. Now let's have a look at that first factory. Wow, this is a great reconstruction of that first factory, and we even have some of the original equipment used back in 1891. Now, Gerard Philips, Mr. Edison, who is said to be the inventor of electric lighting, used bamboo for the filament, the most important part of an electric light bulb. And that bamboo had to be cut piece by piece in the right dimensions. But Gerard used a much more efficient production method, and he tried with that to outsmart his competitors. Now, what did he use as a material for the filament? Well, it's hard to believe, but he used, and you can see that here, if you can see it, well, wait one moment. He used, yes, he used, I have to step into the...
Well, Gerard was always experimenting.
He used cotton as well, I tried to step into the room, but here it is, yes. I had the wrong button. Well, here you see the cotton he used. This cotton was dissolved in an acid in these and injected in these drums. And then you got a long thread of cellulose, and that cellulose was cut into pieces and put in an oven. So it carbonized, and it would conduct electricity. So it was a much more efficient way to produce it. And the young girls, placed the filament into the glass balloons, the light bulbs. They did that delicate work. And we can listen to two actors of the museum, and they tell a little bit, a short fragment of a play that they perform in our museum.
Well, Gerard was always experimenting. He was always very busy, reading in books, listening to other people, and he wrote everything down in that little notebook of his. But he had quite a number of competitors, so he had to be very clever about it. And that's where we came in, the girls.
Yes, the girls. The girls were very important to the company. And if we have a look at this picture, you can see here the first employees of Philips. So these are your predecessors. Now, the men in front with those big mustaches did the heavy lifting and also operated the steam engine. But the girls on the back were very important because they did, with their small hands, the fiddly and very precise work of placing the filament in the light bulbs and attaching them. And well, they had to work hard, but Philips was a company with a great social conscience and took very well care of its employees. So, for example, Philips even paid wages when they got sick, and that was very unusual in that time. Philips also had a good pension scheme and well, also had a fund for the children of employees if they wanted to study. So it was a great company to work for and still is. Philips also provided, for example, good housing. Now in this picture, the next picture I show you, you can see well, that there were many people after these first 30 employees. There were many people who joined Philips, and within a few years, it grew and grew, and there were thousands of employees working for Philips. But they had to live somewhere in Eindhoven, so Philips also built modern housing. And these houses had, for example, a sewerage system, and also had running water, so you don't had to walk to a pump, to a central pump system or something like that. No, these were very modern housings. Now Philips also took care of free medical care. You can see that here. It's a little hospital for Philips employees, and there even was room for recreation and sports. Here you see the team of PSV, the Philips Sports Association, and you see here the football club that won the championship of the Netherlands for the first time in 1929. Now it was great to work for this company, and well, before we move into the main hall of the museum, maybe it's a good moment to ask if there are any questions. Olga, are there any questions?
Sergio, it's very nice to read that we have a lot of visitors from all over the world.
Wow.
I need to tell you, there's people from Bangalore, from India, from Singapore, from Sydney, from France, from Switzerland, from Poland. Wow. It's incredible.
It's
if you feel
unbelievable.
that vibe, that's really nice to see.
Great.
So I really need to tell you. We don't have a lot of questions yet, so please, I invite everyone, if something comes to your mind, just drop it in the chat, and it doesn't need to be necessarily a very intelligent question. I have one question here, and I do not really understand the question. Is the notebook still around? It's something you understand? Or maybe we need to, you know what, I ask the visitor, our colleague, what he exactly means.
Well, I think he refers to an early notebook of Philips, but it's not around anymore.
Okay, okay, good. Another question is, who were the first customers of Philips? Who were the first clients of those light bulbs?
Oh, that's a great question, because, well, it's quite ironic, but the first customer of Philips is said to be a candlestick factory in Gouda. So it's great that the candle factory used a very new product to produce candles.
They didn't have enough candles then.
Yes, yeah, well, they probably so, but the electric lighting was much better. So and it was much safer to use in a factory. So the first customers were mainly factories and offices and, for example, hotels. Because electric lighting in those days was very, very expensive. So only very rich people could afford to have their housing equipped with electric light, because there was no electricity plants yet. You had to have your electricity plant of your own, so your own steam engine to with a generator to provide the needed electricity.
Okay, good. I have one more question before we continue. Where did all these thousands of employees come from during that time?
Well,
as
mainly,
Eindhoven was a very small city.
Yes, but mainly in the first years from the surroundings of Eindhoven. But later on, they came from far and wide. So also from the northern provinces and the southern provinces of the Netherlands, but also from Austria and Bohemia and Czechia, mainly to work in the glass factory.
Yeah, that was
Philips
another question. First international
factory.
employees that was
Yes.
from Czechia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and Germany and Austria. Yeah. They were working in the first glass factory of Philips, and that was founded in 1916. Also during the First World War, when the borders were closed to import glass bulbs from Germany and Austria.
Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we go ahead.
Okay, let's move on to our next section. Well, here on the left and right, there are a few major improvements in lighting. You can see here, for example, street lighting made by Philips, and this this made traffic much safer. And on the left, you can see some milestones in electric lighting, like the invention of metal filament lamps, but also energy-saving lamps, and of course, present-day LED lamps. But well, let's move on to another amazing part of our history, connecting the world. Now, as I already told you, Philips started with producing radio tubes in 1918, but almost 10 years later, Philips also started with producing and developing radio sets. So that was a really successful business in the 20s and 30s. And after 5 years, Philips already sold 1 million radio sets because of the high quality. Now, radio in those days was like internet and Wi-Fi of today. You could connect to the whole world, and you could listen to music, to news, to sports, and you could receive broadcasts from all over the world and get it into your living room. Now, in that same year, 1927, even Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands and her daughter Princess Juliana, they came to Eindhoven to give a live broadcast to the overseas territories. And it was for the first time that the inhabitants of the overseas territories, and for example, Indonesia, heard the voice of their queen live. Here we can see also other examples of those radio sets that Philips produced. And we also see one of the first television sets after the war. And also, of course, in black and white. And Philips, as a very innovative company, also had the first color broadcast of Europe back in 1964. And you see here one of the first color televisions of our company. Now, if we are talking about radio, we also have our corporate identity thanks to radio. Now, it has all to do with this man here, Louis Kalf. And Louis Kalf was the first design director of Philips. And he worked here from 1925 till his pension in 1960. And he had a great influence in the corporate identity of our company. Now, he wrote, as a young architect, he wrote a letter to Anton Philips, stating that the way Philips advertised was very old-fashioned and didn't fit a modern company like Philips. Now, Anton Philips recognized his talent and hired this ambitious young man. And he didn't hire him as a normal employee, but made him head of the design department right away. And Louis Kalf played an important part, as I already said, in the corporate identity. Now, how did our shield emblem, our logo, develop? Well, that has all to do with an assignment that Kalf got back in 1925. He had to design packaging for a radio tube. But Kalf didn't know much about how radio worked, so he asked an engineer, and that technician explained him that radio worked with radio waves going through the atmosphere, going through the sky. And Kalf used that image for that first packaging. And here you see the packaging and the first use of the waves and the stars. Now, these waves and stars were also used as a decoration for a round loudspeaker opening. Et voilà, we have here the first trademark of Philips from 1934. And well, these waves and stars also symbolized the main activities of Philips in that era, namely lighting the stars and the waves for sound. So Philips was light and sound. And the round circle also symbolizes the world. Now, when we, in 1938, the name Philips was put above the round circle, and you get the first shield emblem in the main colors, in the primary colors, red, yellow, and of course, Philips blue. So now you know how our logo came into being. There were a few restylings, and the last restyling of the logo was in 2013. It was modernized. And this is our present-day logo. And you also see that it only has two waves. And well, that's that it can be used on small screens like your smartphone. Now, how about X-ray? Well, let's have a look in the main hall of our museum. And we can, so you get a nice overview. There are different themes in our museum, but well, what about X-ray? Well, also in the 20s, Philips did some major innovations on that field. And you see here two X-ray tubes that were very important and still are important today. The first one was also a major improvement. It's the Metalix X-ray tube. And for the first time, it had a metal shield against the dangerous X-ray radiation. So it was a great improvement, especially for medical staff who worked with this every day. Now, the second major improvement of 1929 was the Rotalix. And this is a very special tube because you could not only see the bones clearly, but also organs, soft tissues like the heart and the lungs. And the principle of the Rotalix is still in use today. So it was a great improvement. You can see here an old advertisement of the 30s. And you can see also here that you can see the lungs and the heart. Now, these X-ray tubes of Philips also played a very important part in the fight against tuberculosis in the 30s. It was a very deadly and dangerous lung disease, tuberculosis. And well, there was no antibiotics, there was no medicine against it. You could only cure if you discovered tuberculosis in a very early stage. Now, Philips took the initiative, Anton Philips and Dr. Berger of the Philips Medical Department, they took the initiative to screen all employees of Philips on tuberculosis with their X-ray tubes. And you can see them here standing in a long queue. But, well, after screening all employees, it didn't stop there. They also screened all family members of employees. And well, after that, all inhabitants of Eindhoven were screened. Now, the results were tremendous. And here Anton Philips speaks about the results. In the city of Eindhoven, there were 60 to 70% less fatal fatalities than in other major cities in the Netherlands. So as a businessman, Anton Philips also wrote a letter to the Minister of Health, and he said, well, these are the results for Eindhoven. Let's do this in all of the Netherlands. And then we, of course, as Philips, can provide the X-ray tubes. Now, well, it's a great example and an early example of improving people's lives with meaningful innovations. Now let's move on to the international section of our museum. And well, Philips was right from the start an international company. Anton, well, in the first year he was employed in 1895, already contacted South Africa, and a few years later, 3 years later, he visited Russia, and well, he sold many lamps in that area. But we were also already in the 20s involved in China and South Africa, as I told you, and well, after the war, also in India. And well, it's great to know that the template of Eindhoven, well, that was also used in other countries, in other sites. So social provisions and working conditions in Eindhoven, they served as a template in the company's global expansion worldwide. And Philips earned a reputation as an excellent employer with a strong focus on the social well-being of employees and local communities. Now it all starts already from the very first beginning. Now, if you want to keep sales up and stay ahead of the competition, you have to be innovative and you have to have all kinds of inventions of your own. So let's have a look at the research part of our museum. The origins of Philips research. Here we have that. Now, Gerard Philips took the initiative to start Philips research in 1914, and well, he hired one of the main scientists in the Netherlands. It was Gilles Holst, and Gilles Holst was an assistant of a Nobel Prize winner, Kamerlingh Onnes. And so he started in 1914 as a director of Philips research. And well, Philips research really got a very strong reputation in the world. Even Albert Einstein visited Philips research in 1923. And Gilles Holst gave a lot of freedom to his scientists. And they were also able to work on their own projects. And this led to a vast number of inventions. And today Philips has more than 60,000 patents to its name. Now in these round displays, we also show a few very well-known inventions by Philips. And well, you can see here, for example, the rotary shaver, the Philips shaver. And well, it is introduced in 1939 and has already sold about, well, 1 billion the shavers are sold in the world. So it's very successful. And also one of the latest models, the One Blade, is a huge international success. Now in this display, you see also two of the very well-known inventions. It's the cassette player, introduced in 1963. And well, especially young people were using it to make their own playlist. You could sit near the radio and push the record button, and you could make a cassette with all your favorite music. It was also very portable, so you could use it everywhere. Now, an even greater invention was the invention of the compact disc. And this really revolutionized the music industry. Well, you didn't need a needle or a gramophone to play music, but this compact disc used laser. So it was not, compact discs were not as vulnerable for dust and scratches, for example. And well, it really was a great success from the 80s onwards. Okay. We are moving this way. Yes. And well, before we go upstairs, maybe it's a good opportunity to ask Olga again, are there any questions, Olga?
Yes, Sergio, I'm quite busy with the questions here. So nice to see that people want to know more. One question is, when was the first Philips patent?
Oh, the first patent. Well, that is well, about 10 years before the start of Philips research. It's in 1905, and it was a patent by Gerard Philips himself. He invented a way to for a longer lasting endurance of the filament. So that was the first patent, and it was registered in Germany, because well, in the Netherlands there was no patent law. It was only active since 1912.
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Another question here is about the X-ray tubes. Did Philips already produce X-ray tubes before acquiring the company Röntgen Müller?
Yes,
from
yes.
Hamburg? There's someone from Hamburg, by the way.
The Müller company was acquired by Philips in 1927. And Philips produced its first X-ray tubes in 1918. And in 1924, Philips invented the Metalix tube. So they were already involved in X-ray. But when they took over Müller, they also started building complete X-ray devices. So not only the tubes, but the complete set.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it was really a great acquisition, Müller. Yeah. Because Müller was one of the oldest X-ray tube manufacturers in the world, and started shortly after the invention of Wilhelm Röntgen in 1895 with producing X-ray tubes, and they were of very high quality.
Nice, yeah. Mm-hmm. And we just celebrated the anniversary of X-ray last year.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so much interesting information. Another question is, but I will just answer that. It's the question was: is there a real museum, or is there only a virtual museum? Which of course is a nice question, but to answer it to everyone here, we do have a real museum in Eindhoven. Yes. And that's exactly what we took all those razor sharp pictures of and put it in a 3D model. That's how you are visiting it now as a virtual museum. So yes, we have a real museum. Yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. Maybe one more question. And the question, let me see, was about the wiring of the city, the towns in the Netherlands, when in the early days of electrical lighting. Was Philips also doing the wiring, or?
No, Philips concentrated on producing light bulbs. Other companies like Siemens in Germany, and they produced the complete systems with wiring, with a generator, etc. But Philips really focused on the light bulbs. So Gerard Philips was really keen on delivering high quality lamps for a reasonable price. So the quality was key, you know. So and that's why he concentrated on very effective production methods to produce high quality light bulbs. And well, it's really about focusing on one product.
Yeah. Okay.
Like we do today on healthcare and health technology. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to have a look in your living room.
Yes, okay.
Wasn't it yours?
Well, let's go upstairs, and here you are in my living room. would like to invite you for a virtual cup of coffee here and take a seat. Well, this is a living room from the 50s and 60s. And well, you can see a lot of products that is Philips famous for, like of course lighting, but also radio sets, gramophones, television, and well, you can see here also a tape recorder. But well, this is how many people remember Philips. And when visitors come to the museum, they always say, "Hey, my father had one of those radio sets," or something like that. So this is what we call memory lane in the museum. And we also have here, we have a nice kitchen of the 60s and 70s, you know, with domestic appliances like, well, a coffee maker and a fryer, and here you can see a toaster, and even a juicer and a mixer. So all Philips produced after the war all kinds of products, and as prosperity grew, people had more money and more free time to buy electrical products. So this really improved people's lives, because life and doing household jobs was much easier. And people had also the money to buy, for example, televisions and, well, more records, etc. But Philips also produced a lot of components, like, for example, transistors or electronic tubes, and also professional equipment, like radar installation or computer systems. And well, also studio cameras, for example. Here you can see also the first satellite of the Netherlands, built by Philips and aviation company Fokker. Now, here you can see other examples of it. But, well, Philips produced, you could say, everything with a plug on it. Everything on electricity, working with electricity. So everything with a plug on it. Well, everything? No, not quite. There were also products without a plug. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know who's got... You have already heard it. It was David Bowie. And even David Bowie well, issued his first solo records on the Philips label. So Philips also had a big record company. And well, other famous bands and artists were on one of the Philips labels. For example, 10cc, The Who, Vicky Leandros, but also a few records of the Rolling Stones. Now, but in the 60s, there was also well, a growing awareness that there were limits to the growth. And I'll show you something about it, about that subject. It's here. So there were limits to growth, and we need to use energy and raw materials in a responsible manner. Right from the start, Philips was involved in the report of the Club of Rome. And this report and the Club of Rome played a huge role in making the world realize that we cannot continue with this level of consumption unchecked. Now, Fritz Philips, the son of Anton Philips and the president of our company in the 60s, actively implemented a policy that took into account the needs of people and society and the environment. And sustainability has been a top priority for the company for decades. And you can see here in this picture measurement equipment for well, the emission of air pollution. So this is one of the ways that Philips contributed from the 60s onwards to sustainability. Now let's move on to the last part of our tour, and that's this section. We cross the bridge and we go from the past to present day Philips and the future of Philips. And in this section of our museum, we have 5 big screens showing a few innovation themes of our company on the field of health technology. Now, this section of the museum was opened by our president, Frans van Houten, in 2016. And you can see that here on this picture. Now, one of the main themes is, for example, imaging. And with imaging in 2-dimensional and 3-dimension, with or without virtual reality, it is possible, for example, not only to look into a body without cutting it, but also to perform a surgery. And you can see that here in this picture. You don't need to open the rib cage for heart surgery, but with a small incision in the groin or the pulse, you can perform the surgery. So this is, well, a great improvement, especially for the patient, because there is a much quicker recovery, and even patients can sometimes leave the hospital the same day. It's amazing. It's quite astonishing, and it really is a miracle. Now, it was also visited here in our site in Best. We see that Queen Maxima of the Netherlands visited also a hybrid operating room. Now, we also play an important part in e-health, in remote sensing, and we can, with sensors, check the patient's, for example, the patient's heart rate and the temperature. And this is, well, it's very relevant now, especially during Corona and in the future of healthcare. Now, you are mostly working within healthcare, so I'll keep it brief because you know a lot more about this than I do. But well, we show you as we display this in our museum. So also what we have here is a ventilator, and of course Philips played a huge role in the fight against COVID-19, just as we did in the 30s against the fight against tuberculosis. And we do that with ventilators, but also with diagnostic equipment and with e-health solutions. Now, the last part of this museum, I want to show you a great example of how we improve people's lives through meaningful innovations. And well, of course, that's in the ambient experience room with the help of Disney. So this really relaxes, for example, children who have to undergo an MRI scan and are feeling much more relaxed with these nice images. And well, I will also show you around in a treatment room of MRI, and then we'll conclude this tour. So enjoy. Now, we've come a long way in 130 years. From a light bulb factory, we evolved into a technical company, and from a technical company, we evolved into a health tech company, and we focused on that. And well, I hope I've inspired you with this tour. And well, maybe after Corona, when you are able to visit the Netherlands, please also have a visit in our Philips Museum. And you are very welcome, and you have free entrance with your Philips badge. So I hope to see you later on, and well, have a great future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Applause, I think, from everyone in the audience. I saw a lot of compliments coming your way, and people really enjoyed the tour and to hear about our history. And of course, people feel proud because we are all part of this company. So really nice. Well done.
Thank you.
We have a few questions for you, but maybe before we go to the questions, it's good to tell everyone that the link to this Yammer event will be shared. Of course, you can always replay it, at least till the end of this May month, but we will share the link afterwards also with all the colleagues. So people can, maybe you can promote it to your colleagues. But let's go to some questions. One very interesting question is, and it's hard to answer it in a short way, is, are there also examples of failures within Philips, which can be an important lesson to learn as well?
Of course, because, well, Philips also had times of hardship. It's not only good times, but well, in some periods we really struggled, and well, we invented ourselves and stayed relevant to today, to today's society. Well, if you
can you give one example, Sergio? Can you give one example?
Well, one example is, for example, the video system, the Video 2000. Well, it didn't work out as well. It was a great system, technical advanced, but VHS was much cheaper and was much more available in great quantities. So, well, that one. Also, the Betamax system of Sony didn't make it. So, but that was well, not successful. And another example.
So it does depend not only on technical knowledge, but also on marketing or timing or whatever.
Yes, very important. It's another great example is is the video long play record. It was ahead of its time, and it was not well marketed in the right period, because well, you could play a complete movie on it. But that was in
so
in
what
the period.
What was it? It was a big record.
Yes, it was a record, gold or silver, and there was a film on it. So you could play films in very high quality, but that was the period that many people bought a VHS recorder. So
which time was it? Do you know which year?
It was in the 70s.
70s already. Yeah, very advanced.
But that really didn't commercially work out, but it was changed into one of the biggest successes of Philips, namely the compact disc. So to put only audio on this record, well, it proved to be one of the biggest successes in the history of Philips.
Yeah, it would also make a really nice tour, huh? A tour about failures.
Yes.
Good idea, thank you. Another question is, did Philips produce any consumer products without electricity?
Yes. Well, of course, records. There was a great record company, and also Philips had together with Siemens, they had Polygram. Polygram was established, and Polygram was a great record industry, and also produced films like For Weddings and a Funeral, The Big Lebowski, and even some of the Mr. Bean pictures. So it was one of the major entertainment industries in the world.
But you still needed electricity for that. So is there any product?
Oh. Yes, there were also. We had a large Bakelite factory called Philippe in Philips language, and we made, for example, door handles, but also toilet seats.
Yes.
and coffee cups, you know. So yeah, we did a lot of things.
Yes.
But they are not very well known. So they mainly produced things with a plug on it. It was a huge electrotechnical company.
Yeah. Another question was about the Second World War. I already answered a little bit in the chat that it can be a very long story to tell about the Second World War and Philips, and that you might answer it in Yammer after the tour. But is there anything in short answer you can say something, or is it too long?
Well, the Netherlands was occupied by the German forces during the Second World War. So Philips had also to provide equipment for the war industries. And it was a time of great hardship. Philips managed to save a lot of its Jewish employees, but well, on the other hand, had to also produce things for the war effort of the Germans. And the company and the factories in Eindhoven were bombed on, especially in 1942. So, well, it had a huge impact. More than 150 people died during that bombing. And also the occupying forces executed a few employees who were on strike. And they striked against the deportation of Jewish people. So it was, well, it was a very, it were times of great hardship.
Yeah, it's very different angles, huh, to talk about it. Yes.
Well,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are some great books about it, especially by Ivo Blanke, the former historian of the company. He
Only
wrote,
in Dutch, or is there English? Are there English?
it's also translated. Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was our Philips historian. Huh?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Now it's Jan Paulussen. Yeah,
Yeah.
also a great historian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I think I can just tell you that we have so many nice compliments in the chat. So people from again from Hungary, from Poland, from UK, from all places in the world are joining us.
Unbelievable.
So that's really nice. And yeah, as we know, in some countries people are still really combating COVID more than in others. So we really enjoy being together in this way. And someone said, "Oh, it's nice that thanks to the pandemic, this virtual tour is being developed." Because that's true. I think otherwise we would have never, or it will have lasted another 10 years before we would have done it, because we are so busy with our real physical museum. But now we won't stop. So we will be sharing in a virtual way.
It's also great to know that our museum before Corona was visited by 95,000 people a year. So in 2019. Yeah. So we hope on better times and on the opening of the museum shortly.
Yeah, yeah. The last question for today is, what an amazing journey. Do we have good R&D team to invent so many things? But you already talked about research. But yes, is there something more you want to say about the R&D teams in the world?
Philips invests a great deal of money in R&D, and there are about more than 1,500 people working in R&D. So it's really great.
Yeah, and it's our life source. Yeah. So I would like to thank you, Sergio, and the team behind the scenes, and everyone around the world to be with us today. Hope you have a nice day, and we hope to see you back maybe someday in Eindhoven or in a virtual tour. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Olga. I'll give you a high five.
Oh yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.